Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host.
And I'm here with you.
We're jumping straight into, well, the interesting stuff happening out there.
And sorting through it, pulling out what really matters.
Okay, so this is episode 29 of our Unplugged Headlines podcast series, where we pick one really significant piece and really dig into it.
Yep, get under the skin of it.
And today we're looking at a blog post with a pretty attention-grabbing title: Why the First Global Financial Identity Network Could Be the Most Valuable Platform Since the Internet.
Oh, yeah, that's a big claim. But the core idea is actually quite compelling. Could a single way to prove financial identity really be that big?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're diving into. The post kicks off by outlining a problem that honestly feels pretty familiar. The way we prove who we are financially seems, well, kind of clunky.
Totally. The systems we rely on, ACH, card networks, SWIFT for international stuff, they're all a bit dated, and crucially, they don't really talk to each other well when it comes to identity.
Uh-huh. It's like they all operate in their own silos.
Exactly. So every time you sign up for something new, a fintech app maybe, or try to send money overseas.
They have to go through the whole proof of identity song and dance again, even if you just did it somewhere else. The blog post calls it a kind of hidden tax.
Yeah, a hidden tax. And it's not just a small inconvenience. The post gives some solid examples of this inefficiency. Think about recertification.
Oh, yeah, like inside big banks where different teams are constantly rechecking the same customer info.
Precisely, just wasted time and resources. Or think about signing up for a new financial service online.
Right. The post mentioned, what was it, up to 40% of people might just give up if that quick sign-up suddenly needs slow manual ID checks.
Yeah, 40%. That's a massive drop-off rate. Kills momentum for new products.
And then there are things like chargebacks. Online sellers losing money because verifying who's actually buying is inconsistent.
It all adds up. And it hits businesses, too. Small exporters waiting days for payments because every bank in the chain does its own Know Your Business check.
Even if the same docs were checked just days before by someone else.
Exactly. So while each issue seems maybe manageable on its own, the blog argues the cumulative effect is this huge drag on, well, the whole global economy's efficiency.
Okay, so that's the problem, this fragmented, repetitive identity checking.
Yeah.
What's the proposed solution in the blog post?
The big idea is this concept of a global financial identity network. Picture having a sort of digital credential, like a secure passport, but for finance.
Okay.
It's cryptographically linked to you or your business, issued by someone trusted, and here's the key: you can reuse it.
Reuse it where?
Across different financial interactions. Your bank, online shops, paying invoices, maybe even in a physical store eventually.
So instead of proving who you are every single time...
You verify once, get this trusted credential, and then just present that credential.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense.
Yeah.
Verify once, use many times, cuts out the friction.
Right. It saves time, cuts costs, reduces hassle. The post draws a pretty powerful analogy here, comparing this potential network to TCP/IP for the internet.
Meaning? Like the fundamental trust layer, the thing that makes everything else work on top.
Exactly that, a foundational layer for financial trust.
Interesting. Now, the post also talks about how this network builds value. It's not just about more users, right? They have this triple engine growth model. Let's break that down.
Yeah, this is where it gets really clever, I think. They look beyond just, Metcalfe's law, more connections equals more value.
Okay, so the first engine is still connections, the n squared part. More verified people or businesses mean exponentially more possible interactions. Standard network effect.
Right, but then they add the second engine, reuse. They call it M. Every single time someone reuses their credential instead of doing a full new verification.
That saves cost and time. And those savings aggregate across the whole network, adding value.
Precisely. And the third engine is time, represented as log T.
Log T, logarithmic time.
Yeah. The idea is the longer an identity credential exists and has a positive track record, no fraud, good behavior, the more trustworthy and valuable it becomes.
But the value increases more slowly over time, hence the logarithm.
Exactly. It compounds, but with diminishing returns as time goes on. So the formula they put forward is V AKM ASM AMAMAT. Value depends on connections, reuse, and that time-based trust all multiplied together.
So it's not just incrementing improvement. The post suggests this is a step function jump, turning identity from a cost center into like a compounding asset.
A compounding asset, yeah. And they try to back this up with some real-world parallels.
Right. They look at existing networks like Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah, they suggest the valuations of those networks correlate better when you factor in not just users, but also payment volume, which relates to reuse and the age of the network, the logged factor.
Okay, that makes sense. And credit bureaus, too.
Absolutely. A huge chunk of a credit bureau's value comes from its historical data, especially files older than 3 years. That really highlights the power of that log T, that history. It's hard for newcomers to replicate.
Which emphasizes the point about getting in early. That head start matters a lot. The Post estimated, what, a 3-year lead could mean an 18% value premium?
Something like that, yeah. Because building that trusted history takes time, you can't just buy it instantly. It creates a significant moat.
So if this network happens, it could really shake things up for different players.
For sure. Investors might see it as a chance to back fundamental infrastructure, potentially monopolistic.
And banks, financial institutions,
Mm.
instead of KYC being purely a cost, they could potentially earn royalties for issuing and attesting to these reusable identities.
That's the idea. Monetizing the trust they already establish. And regulators might find it easier to track illicit flows and enforce sanctions with a more unified system.
And what about the tech side, developers?
Big need for APIs, tools to connect easily, but crucially, ways to protect privacy. Things like zero-knowledge proofs, where you can prove something without revealing the underlying data.
To make it more concrete, the blog post paints some pictures of the future, like scenarios for 2030.
Yeah, like imagine an entrepreneur in Kenya instantly opening a US dollar account because their verified business identity is recognized globally.
Or a German manufacturer settling an invoice with a Vietnamese supplier in minutes, not days, because the KYB is seamless. Maybe even getting trade finance easier.
Right, or a freelancer in Brazil getting paid instantly by a US client with compliance stuff embedded right in the payment token.
And maybe a couple in Toronto getting a mortgage approved way faster because their verified financial history is easily accessible and trustworthy.
It paints a picture of much lower friction. But of course, big ideas raise big questions. Privacy, security.
How does the post address those? Because centralizing identity sounds risky.
Well, it argues the network doesn't need to hold all your raw data. It could just hold verifiable claims about you.
Hmm.
And as mentioned, tech like zero-knowledge proofs could allow verification without revealing secrets.
And security.
They suggest that a purpose-built, distributed system using techniques like sharding data across jurisdictions and strong cryptography, maybe hardware keys, could actually be more secure than today's massive separate vulnerable databases.
What are regulations? Banks are often restricted from sharing data.
The idea there is maybe using binary attestations. So Bank A doesn't share all your data with Bank B. It just answers a specific question with a yes or no based on the data it holds. That might satisfy rules while still avoiding redoing the whole check.
Okay. The post also touches briefly on the tech stack needed, right? Wallets, identifiers.
Yeah, quickly outlines layers. A wallet for users, a routing layer, maybe using decentralized identifiers, DIDs, a consensus layer like a permission blockchain, and a data layer possibly sharded by region. And mentions revenue models, fees for issuance, usage, royalties back to issuers.
And a roadmap. Where would this start?
Suggests focusing initially on cross-border B2B payments, standardizing data formats, creating incentives maybe like identity staking, and using a decentralized governance model.
Right, so bringing it back to you listening. Depending on your role, CFO, product lead, regulator, investor, the blog post argues there are real implications to consider here.
It's definitely food for thought.
This deep dive into the idea of a global financial identity network really does frame it as potentially transformative, like fundamentally changing how trust works online for money.
The argument is strong. Making identity portable and reusable could unlock massive efficiency gains and maybe form a new foundational layer for the digital economy.
It's presented as a huge opportunity, and the post really stresses that early involvement could be key in shaping whatever comes next.
Which leads to a final thought for you to mull over. If your financial identity did become this secure, portable, reusable asset, how would that actually change your day-to-day interactions, your business? And who do you think is best positioned to build this future? Something to think about.